be quite the fickle-hearted rover, so carefree and bold, who loves a girl and later thinks it over and just quits cold. But once in love with Amy, always in love with Amy, ever and ever, sweetly your romancer. Trouble is the answer will be that Amy'd rather stay in love with me. Always in love with Amy, ever and ever, fascinated by her, set your heart afire to stay. Get rid of your list, it's Amy. Ply her with bonbons, poetry and flowers, moon a million hours away. You might be quite the fickle-hearted rover, so carefree and bold, who loves a girl and later thinks it over and just quits cold. But once in love with Amy, always in love with Amy, ever and ever, sweetly your romancer. Trouble is, the answer will be that Amy's rather stay in love. Once in love with Amy, always in love with Amy, ever and ever, fascinated by her, sets your heart afire to stay. Once you're kissed by Amy, tear up your list, it's Amy. Fly her with bonbons, poetry and flowers, moon a million hours away. You might be quite the fickle-hearted rover, so carefree and bold, who loves a girl and later thinks it over and just quits cold. But once in love with Amy, always in love with Amy, ever and ever, sweetly your romancer. Trouble
Esainai El Hearim, Esainai El Hearim, Me'ayin Yavo, Yavo Ezri, Me'ayin Yavo, Yavo Ezri, Me'ayin Yavo, Yavo Ezri, Me'ayin Yavo, Yavo Ezri. Esainai El Hearim, Esainai El Hearim. Me'ayin Yavo, Yavo Ezri, Me'ayin Yavo, Yavo Ezri, Me'ayin Yavo, Yavo Ezri, Me'ayin Yavo, Yavo Ezri.
Esainai, I lift up my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. We are gathered here today to honor the life and memory of Alan Sterencier. Death has come to him as it does to us all. Death brings to our minds and hearts the common concerns and shared destiny of all humankind. We're drawn together by deep-felt emotions. It should remind us of the essential community that lies beneath the too many divisions of humanity on earth. We bring our sympathies to the mourners, to Margie, dear Margie, Alan's partner in every way. He was your husband, he was your best friend, he was your business partner, he was your soulmate. To Amy and to David, his daughter and his son, how he loved you both in every way. And to Dixie and to Phyllis, you became son and daughter to him. And Allie and Josie and Charlie and Zach and Zoe and Hannah too. You were the length of his days. He was so proud of you all. We are awed into silence. Our lives and the lives of our loved ones are rooted in a profound mystery that is past our understanding. In the face of eternity, we are made simple. Though we know our destiny is to tarry but a while, the time of separation brings anguish and grief. May we bear our burden bravely. May we struggle through the darkness with courage to find our way again.
Mourning is inevitable because it is the price that we pay for having the strength and courage to love others deeply. And we know that even in grief, the wonders of a human life are too complex and too magnificent to be memorialized in grief alone. The gift of spirit, devotion, goodness, kindness, generosity that Alan leaves in this world. It cannot be measured, it cannot be judged or weighed, and it cannot be tarnished by time. For even in our darkest hours, we know that some of his light and his warmth will always be with us, bringing comfort and courage, and in the fullness of time, also healing and peace. From the Psalms, Adonai ma'adam v'teda'ehu, ben enosh vat chashvehu, Adam lehevel dama, yamav ketzel over, baboker yatzitz v'chalaf, la'erev yemolel v'yavesh, tashev enosh ad daka, vat homer, shuvu v'nei Adam. Adonai, what are we that you have regard for us? What are we that you are mindful of us? We are like a breath, our days like a passing shadow. We come and go like grass that in the evening fades and withers away. You cause all mortals to turn to dust, saying, "Return to me, mortal creatures." Would that we were wise, would that we understood where we are going. For when we die, we carry nothing away with us. Our glory does not accompany us, but remains behind in the world for all those who love us to embrace. Mark the wholehearted and behold the upright. They shall have peace. Adonai, you redeem the souls of your servants, and none who trust in you shall ever be desolate. Generally, there is a prescribed collection of psalms and poetry and prayers that have been with our people throughout the millennia to offer comfort at times of loss. I received a request yesterday from Amy for a non-traditional, traditional prayer, which I'm happy to oblige, because I find it very appropriate to offer these words, usually from the evening service, in which we ask God to look over us with a Sukkot Shalom, with a protective canopy of peace. And so that's what I wish for all of you, our mourners, today, and I hope that for anyone else who knows this, you can join along in offering this as a wish. Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Shalom V'hamidenu Shomreinu Lechayim Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Leshalom V'hamidenu Shomreinu Lechayim Ushmor Tzedenu Uvoenu L'chaim Ushalom Me'ata ve'ad olam Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom V'hamidenu Shomreinu L'chaim Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom V'hamidenu Shomreinu L'chaim.
L'kol zman ve'et, l'chol chefetz tachat hashamayim. In the book of Ecclesiastes, we read, "For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born, and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. In this time of grief, we look to our sacred scriptures for solace. And we find there the psalmist who brings us the ever new message of God's nearness and tells us of our bond with the Creator in light and in darkness, in joy and in sorrow, in life and in death. Mizmor LeDavid, Psalm 23, a psalm of David. God is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever.
Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, b'yenei teshe yarbitzeini al mei menuchot yenaleini. Nafshi yeshovev, nafshi yeshovev, yanecheini v'maglei tzedek leman shemo. Gam yelech begeit salmaven. Shiftecha umishantecha hema enachamuni taroch lefanai shulchan taroch lefanai shulchan taroch lefanai shulchan neged sorerai dishanti vashemen roshi dishanta vashemen roshi dishanta vashemen roshi osirevayo. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai v'shavti beveit Adonai v'shavti beveit Adonai leorech yamim yair hararot yair hararot The story is told in the Midrash by Rabbi Levi. Imagine, he says, 2 ships laden with merchandise, one coming into port and the other going out on its journey. The people standing on the dock cheer only for the ship on its way back to port. So a puzzled spectator asks, why cheer only for the ship returning home, but not for the one going out to sea? When someone in the crowd replies, we are cheering the ship that is coming in, for we know that it went out in peace, and it has returned to us once more in peace. However, the ship that is just now beginning its voyage, who can tell what its fate will be? So it is with a human being. When a person is born and begins his life's journey, we do not know what sort of life he will live, what will be the nature of his deeds. However, when he has finished that journey, it is apparent to all what he accomplished and just who he was. We all know what kind of life Alan Sterencier lived. A full life, a joyous life, a devoted life, a life with love for family and friends, with warmth and generosity for all, with very fashionable hats. Alan led by example. His many virtues and accomplishments, together with so much love, shape a beautiful legacy. Alan was a man of character. He had a quick wit, a perceptive eye, and a remarkable ability to see the best in people. His standards were very high, and his judgment was impeccable. He had a moral compass that always pointed true. David, you shared a poignant story, which I'll let you share the details of a little later, about childhood trips to Ogunquit, Maine, a special beach area at the end of the beach called Mystery Island, a magical place to run and explore. Alan would run, but he would always lag behind the rest of you, holding the hand of this blind boy. We'll hear more of the story from you later. David tells this story in a way that illustrates Alan's care for others, his deep desire to open everyone's eyes to another. He was a man who always put others first. He would wear ski clothing 2 decades old while outfitting his kids in the latest gear. At one point, he quit his golf membership to spend more time with Amy and Dave. Alan didn't tell you what he thought you should do. He just did what he thought was right. He led with his heart. He loved unconditionally, hugely. He was able to find positivity everywhere, which is a pretty precious attribute, especially in these days. Alan's love for his family was absolutely boundless. He once joked that if he knew how wonderful grandchildren would be, he might have skipped having children altogether. He was present and loving. Every time one of the kids or the grandkids would get into school, he would be the first one with that school spirit hat or the bumper sticker. Both, and probably many more. He welcomed Dixie into the family as a son. Could not have loved you anymore, even if you were his son. Margie. Margie and Alan and Margie. I learned yesterday about your first date. It was serendipitous. A blind date, a match made by a mutual friend from Keystone Camera, for those who remember Keystone Camera. Margie, you ordered a double scotch on the rocks. It was a bold move that immediately captured Alan's attention. You did not know at that point that that was also his drink, or maybe his was a single. Okay, but the best part of the story is that it was on Yom Kippur at Breakfast. That's the part that charmed the rabbi. A first date at Breakfast on Yom Kippur. Swoon. What a story. It was a perfect beginning to a beautiful story, a love story that lasted 63 years of marriage. 63 years of marriage. You were truly, as you told me, attached at the hip. You were not only partners in life, but also in business. Itinerant salespeople with a singular mission, a dynamic duo traveling all around. Many people probably couldn't work with their spouse very easily. But Margie, you told me that you had the best time of your lives together. You ably mixed business with pleasure. You love to travel, and you love to share many life adventures together with the whole family. Life wasn't always perfect, but you and Alan always ended each day with a kiss and an I love you. And that's how his life ended too. Surrounded by love. Alan's friendships were deep and enduring. Is there anybody here who has been friends with Alan for multiple decades? I know that there's at least one or two joining us on the live stream today. In his later years, Alan faced health challenges, considerable health challenges, with a remarkable resilience. And though he suffered, he rarely complained. He was humble and strong. Dixie told me, you didn't have to cherry pick from great moments and life experiences. Maybe that's the one thing to take away most of all from all of this. The moments that I've shared are not just one-off memories. He was the finest gentleman, just a class act. Every day he was giving something to somebody. That story is the story of his life. The book of Proverbs teaches that the memory of a righteous person will endure as a blessing for all time. And Alan's memory is indeed a blessing to all who knew him. Our TBT family extends our deepest condolences to Margie, Amy, David, your kids, your extended family, all the friends who loved him so very much. May you find comfort in your cherished memories, in his wonderful strength of character, and may his soul find eternal peace. We're now going to invite those who loved Alan, family members, Amy, David, and then the grandkids.
I want to correct one thing that you said. Please. Dixie said he was a class man, he was a fine man, he was the finest man I know. You left that last clause off accidentally.
Oh, please forgive me. Please forgive the
Forgive
omission.
My dad was a humble man. My dad was a loving man. My dad was a gentle man. Literally, the only time he ever got mad at me was the one and only one time I forgot to introduce him to the person I was talking to at a party. After that never to be repeated again incident, I couldn't help but notice a familiar pattern that would happen among his closest friends all the way to strangers. He'd enter a conversation, thrust his hand out, look you straight in the eye, and say, like only a true Havrillian can, Alan Sterencia. I'm pretty sure many people here in this sanctuary have had that very experience. He didn't do it to be showy or formal. He did it because he never, ever wanted anyone to feel uncomfortable. That was my father. So for one last time, I'd like to introduce you all to my father, the exquisite Alan Sterencia. My father was an avid high holy day temple goer. He barely missed the first day of Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur ever. And his favorite part was the sermon, because that's where he could fall asleep. So chances are, if he were here, he might nod off at this point in my eulogy. But I'm going to roll the dice and get a little sermony here for a sec. Turns out the universe was doing its usual thing this week because this week's Torah portion happens to be an auspicious one. It talks about humility. According to Barb, I didn't check this out, but apparently this is the only Torah portion that Moses is not mentioned in by name. He's in the background as he selects Aaron and his sons to become priests. He directs the making of their elaborate clothing for these new priestly roles, and he's charged with consecrating them as priests, even though he's involved in all the planning, he's not mentioned by name, and he remains in the background. And by not talking about himself, according to the rabbis, he was elevating others, he was raising up his family and his community, and he did not need to be mentioned by name. I honestly don't think that my father, who fought very long and very hard to stay alive, passed away this week as a coincidence. It was beshert. Because that's who my father was, a man of great humility, who wanted everyone he loved to shine, and did all the behind-the-scenes machinations he could to make sure that was so. Thank you, universe. As a humble person, my father was not one for giving advice. In fact, I think the only real words of wisdom I ever remember him giving me were, "Keep your eye on the ball." And you know what? I was the first girl to play Little League in my town, thanks to him. And as many of you know, I still spend a good chunk of my time eyeing balls of all sizes these days. There was never a moment where we did not feel loved wholly, fully, and unconditionally. He thought David and I walked on water. We could do no wrong in his eyes. We got a bad grade. No worries, you'll get him next time. Lost a tough basketball game. He'd remember my best play of the game. Got rejected from college. To hell with him. He said that a lot. What more could a daughter ask for? He was also the consummate mensch. We used to joke when Dixie and I were first dating that Dixie went to MIT, mention training. But he really didn't need to go there. He did not look any further than my father, who adored him like his own son. And when it came to his grandchildren, it was game over. From the moment Hannah was born, he could not contain his excitement and oozed with love. No morning was too early for them to take them from our bed so we could sleep a little more. No distance was too far for them to drive, and the special days, they were over the top. His love and devotion to my mother was unbounded, as was hers to him. Every time she came into a room, he told her she looked marvelous. They were, as my mother loves to say, attached at the hip for 35 years. They were not only life partners, but business partners, traveling up and down the East Coast joyfully selling women's clothing to boutiques. It was a perfect lifestyle for them as they seamlessly merged business and pleasure. Dixie and I always marveled at how much time they could spend together, but they absolutely loved it and treasured every moment. My dad loved music. One of my fondest memories as a child was of him playing show tunes on the Victrola. I know I've probably gone on too long, so in the spirit of Adrian Brody, don't play the music just yet, because I created a little playlist of his life, the lessons the man I am lucky enough to call my father taught us through music. Number 1, shower the people you love with love. Somebody once asked my dad what a secret to having such great kids and grandchildren were. He said, "It's easy, just love them." I'd do anything for you, dear, from Oliver. About 15 years ago, Dixie, the girls, and I were going to the Bahamas. Oh God, this is actually 25 years ago. As we were leaving the driveway for our trip to Newark, Dixie turned to me and said, "You sure you have the passports?" "You bet," I said assuredly. I don't know what possessed me to check again at midnight when we were checking into the hotel, but it turned out I didn't actually have them after all. Luckily, my parents were in Stamford visiting their dear friends Shay and Paul, and my always there for me father and mother drove an hour and a half to Brantford to get the missing passports, and then an hour and a half back to meet me. I've yet to ask him for anything that he wouldn't do for me. Number 3, to life, l'chaim. Always pour yourself and your friends a good stiff drink. Oh, Jesus. Oh, wait, no. Enough said. 4, Happy by Farrell. He was a happy guy. He always looked at the bright side of things, and he never dwelled on anything that was bad. Number 5, whistle while you work. When I was growing up, I knew my father was home because he whistled the minute he stepped into the house. I thought all fathers did that as a way to signal their arrival, but was quickly disabused of that notion when I went to friends' houses and dads barely even said hello to them. Number 6. This wasn't necessarily his favorite song, but it's appropriate. A Well-Dressed Man by ZZ Top. It's not how you feel, it's how you look. He, thanks to my mother partially, wore pink before it was popular and had always rocked a paisley tie. This man was dapper and was not afraid to show it. Hey, big spender. I'm pretty sure there was not a more generous guy out there. It became a bit of a sport in our family that whenever we would go out, Dixie had to plan to get to the restaurant early or call ahead to avert my father's ever so quick and sneaky attacks to snatch the bill. Take me out to the ball game. My dad instilled in me a love for all sports and being part of a community, all Boston sports. Number 9, you are the sunshine of my life. There has not been one day in my life where I did not think that I was the sun, the moon, and the stars of his universe. And finally, number 10, Friends by Bette Midler. It's the company you keep. One of his most profound examples was his ability to find and attract amazing people. He and my mother made community and friends wherever they went, including here on the shoreline after they moved here to be with us, closer after Hannah died. That selfless decision they made to leave their entire community in Boston and move here bore many gifts. There were the obvious ones of going to hundreds of soccer games, sleepovers with our girls and their favorites, Grandparents' Day and May Day at the Foot School. But the biggest gift was how they were so interested in meeting all of our friends, getting to know them as individuals, and forming independent relationships with them, like all of you here today. A few years ago, my father broke his hip, and a wonderful woman named Juliet Jacobs, my sister, my new sister, came into our lives. She would say, Alan, you need to drink, over and over again. And he'd look at her with all sincerity and say, Juliet, just give me 5 more minutes. What we wouldn't all give to have just 5 more minutes. And now, Dad, you're with your beloved lamb chop bumblebee, Hannah. I love you. I'm the luckiest girl to have been your daughter, and I know your memory will be a blessing.
Now for the less traditional part of this service. Rather than try and compete with my sister's eulogy, I decided to take a different path today. And I decided to write my dad a letter. Dear Dad, I realize it's been a long time since I wrote a letter to you, an actual letter, not an email, not a fax, an actual letter. Sadly, this will be the last letter I ever write you. But this undoubtedly will be the most important letter I'll ever write in my life. I want to express to you in writing what you've meant to me for the last 58 years and what you'll mean to me for as long as I live. I think it's ironic that I'm writing this letter on my computer instead of the way you did things, even up to the very end. You handwrote everything, all of your letters. I always felt that really wasn't the most efficient way to write a letter. In your case, in addition to letters, you wrote everything down for your business. You would handwrite all your orders, very old school, never taking an order on a computer, which I knew would streamline your business. Nope, not you. You chose the old-fashioned way because it allowed you to flourish in what I believe was your greatest attribute, the ability to connect with people one-on-one, to sit down with a customer and talk to them and look them in the eye, hear what they had to say, and have an actual conversation and do what every salesperson aspires to do, build a relationship, not just be an order taker. And that approach to business is metaphorically exactly how you lived your life. One-on-one personal relationships, yes, with business associates, but more importantly, your closest friends, and most importantly, your family. Dad, if I remember the first book I ever read, cover to cover, that I literally could not put down, it was a book called I Am Third. I'm guessing you may not recognize that book title, but that I read back in 5th grade. I know, sad as it sounds, that the first book I can remember was going back to 5th grade. But this book was actually made into a movie that you may recall. I Am Third was written by NFL legend Gale Sayers. And you may remember the movie Brian's Song. Do you remember Brian's Song, Dad? I Am Third was Gale Sayers' way of saying his faith came first, others came second, and yourself came third. In your case, Dad, your order was a little bit different, but the meaning is certainly the same. Family always came first. Friends came, dare I say, a distant second, and you came even further back. Like, I mean, really far back. Like, to put into perspective, if we were all skiing together as a family, and all the kids were 4 years old, and you were with Mom and Zach Mom and me and Amy and Dixie and Phyllis and Hannah and Charlie and Allie and Josie and Zach, you were really far back. That's pretty far, Dad. But now I understand over time and growing up and maturing, you weren't really that slow. You were just staying at the back of the pack so you knew everyone ahead of you was all safe. I'll give another example that perhaps is more relatable, and the rabbi almost just blew for me, to anyone who may be listening to my letter and to you now. I'll always remember when we were little and you would organize our daily trip to Mystery Island at Ogunquit. We would all line up for the run, or race in my case, because I was a bit of a competitive little SHIT, even at 7 years old. And we'd run down the beach to Mystery Island. And sure enough, you always finished last. But in this case, I want everyone listening to my letter to know that the reason you were last during all those races was because of a little kid named Johnny Bergman, who at the time was about my age. You would automatically hold his hand, and the two of you would run hand in hand down together down the beach and invariably finish last. I remember seeing the biggest smile on Johnny's face. Not a care in the world. He could care less that he finished last. But those of you that are listening to this letter who surely didn't know why my dad and Johnny always finished last, Johnny Bergman was blind. And I didn't know this, Dad, until yesterday when we were meeting with the rabbi, that I heard from Mom many years later. You were visiting the Bergmans, and Johnny and his wife came over to say hi. As soon as he heard your voice, he automatically put his arm out to hold your hand, just like you were in Ogunquit 50 years ago, running down the beach to Mystery Island. I learned a valuable lesson back in those days from you, Dad. Real men finish last. And they wear pink. Speaking of holding hands, Dad, the last few weeks, especially when you weren't saying a whole heck of a lot, I realized how life has really come full circle for us. I can't really remember holding hands with you when I was a little kid, but I do remember once I became a dad, how much I loved holding Zach's hand. I would love walking through Aspen or wherever we were, and we would hold hands. Even up to an age where I thought he would be too old or embarrassed to hold my hand, he would still walk into stores or restaurants or throughout town, and we'd hold hands. And yes, that day finally did come where it was no longer okay for Zach and I to hold hands. But for the last 3 weeks, that's exactly what you and I did every day. Every time I crawled into bed with you, we could no longer communicate with words. But I found a more powerful way to connect, just holding your hand and speaking to each other in silence. It was really the only way I could let you know what you meant to me. What you've taught me as a father, how to be a real man. It's not about the shekels in your pocket, the car that you drive, the size of your house. It's about being true to yourself and showing real and honest character, being a role model for everyone you touch to love and admire. 63 years of marriage to Mom will be far and away your lasting legacy. Like all marriages, there were ups and downs, happy times and sad, successes and failures. And the last several years have been challenging health-wise, an understatement to say the least. Some may think you hung on near the end because you still had so much to live for, and your will to be with your family, still willing you on, motivating to eat, drink, walk. Personally, I think you were just too afraid to tell Mom that it was time to go. Let's be honest, you know how she could get if you just didn't drink. Leaving for eternity? Yikes. Honestly, I don't know how you did it. Not the 63 years, that I get. But working together, traveling together, and literally being attached at the hip together all those years, that is quite the accomplishment. but you not only persevered, you both flourished. For Amy, or as we said at your 90th, your second favorite child, I so admired your deep love and affection for each other, a stronger daddy-daughter relationship to the nth degree. I remember walking down into the back room of our basement, a dark and kind of dank basement, where you wrote the entire words and musical notes to Once in Love with Amy on the cards that you could post throughout our house for everyone to see at her college graduation party. Seriously, Dad, what father does something like that for their kid? It taught me how important loving gestures like that truly are, transcendent. A car's nice, a vacation is wonderful, but the memory of Once in Love with Amy lasts a lifetime. I now choose to remember this song as Always in Love with Amy. And now, Dad, on to what I know is your most cherished and loving legacy, the grandkids. From the day Hannah was born, as your first grandchild, to Allie, to Zoe, to Josie, to Zach, and Charlie, you are never prouder in your life. Amy may have been referred to as the itch, and you may have more on one occasion called me the nudge, but never, and I mean never, was there a negative word or thought when it came to the grandchildren. As you once told me, and I'll never forget, and the rabbi blew this line too, if I knew how great grandkids were, I'd have skipped kids altogether. So note to self, keep your friends close and your rabbis closer. So Dad, as I start to wrap this letter up to you, I just wanted to say thank you for being the incredible father a son could ever ask for, the most incredible father a son could ever ask for. You opened my eyes to so many things that shaped me into who I am today. My love for sports, my love for music, my love for travel, but most importantly, my love for family. We're all here today to pay respect to you and pay homage to the man who for 90 years lived by those words. You truly lived by example. The finest gentleman I've ever come across and the sweetest human being that I've ever met. I love you and miss you dearly already, but I'm at peace knowing that you led the life you dreamt of and leave a legacy that is unparalleled. I know you're not alone where you are now, and that brings me peace that you're with Hannah. I love you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all very much for being here. As Poppy would say, and you've already heard this morning, you all look marvelous. And thank you so much, Rabbi, for your words as well. I think it goes without saying that we're the luckiest ones in the room, as we get to call ourselves Poppy's grandchildren. Poppy, as I'm sure you all know, was the most devoted grandfather. Beginning with Hannah, or as he liked to call her, his little lamb chop bumblebee, he made us feel like there was nothing he loved more than being with us and cheering us on. Do you want me to? I can do it, but you can do it.
His devotion brought him to each one of our soccer games, school plays, and birthday parties. Some might even say that his devotion to grandparenting rivaled his devotion to Judaism. We think that if you were to ask him what the high holidays were, he might just say they fell between the Foot School's Grandparents' Day and May Day. We are so lucky to have been able to spend so much time with him and learn from his loving ways. Naturally soft-spoken, Poppy led by example. Here are a few of the things we learned. Pink, goes with everything. Hope is never a problem. Dodge Caravans, they're pretty cool. Caravans. Butter absolutely makes it better, and you don't need to eat a single vegetable to live to 90.
I'll take this one back. Dancing, if you can believe it, is really all in the thumbs. And some more timeless lessons that we could all definitely use these days. You can make new best friends at any age. If your favorite song is on, take a lap. Make the person you're talking to feel like they're the only person in the room. When you look people in the eyes, you can see goodness in anyone. And always say thank you.
And finally, to end with some... I'm crying, but we're supposed to end with some levity. We wanted to share some of our favorite texts from Poppy over the years. Josie and Zoe were in college at the same time, and Berkeley and USC were playing one another in a football game, and he sent a text to both of them saying, "Hi, Josie and Zoe. When Cal has the ball, I wear my Cal hat. When USC has the ball, I wear my USC hat. Have a wonderful day. We hope to see each other soon. Have a wonderful day. We hope you see each other. Love, Poppy." I found out that among all the grandchildren, I got several more texts than any other grandchild from Poppy, so it was hard to choose which text I was going to read. But the one that I chose was Allie. I guess I surprised him. I don't remember doing that, but Allie, the dinner at Mother's was wonderful, but the hint of the whole evening for me was you hiding in the garage and surprising me. That was so wonderful, Allie. And thank you so much for making the effort and going back and forth the same day. I love seeing you, and I love your company so much. Thank you. We don't see you enough, that's for sure. I hope your ride home didn't get you home too late. Thanks again. Love, Poppy. I don't know if he said thank you maybe one more time in that text. We miss his voice. They really don't make him like this anymore. It's our hope that we'll grow to be even a fraction as generous, selfless, and as kind-hearted as he was.
I just want to make one correction to what Amy said. Alan Sterencier did not sleep during my sermons. Alan died on March 4th, which corresponds to the Hebrew date, the 4th of Adar. Adar is the month in which we celebrate the holiday of Purim, a holiday of frolic and joy and laughter. So much so is the focus on frolic and joy and laughter that the entire month of Adar is ushered in with the words, Misha nichnas Adar marbin basimcha. Those who enter Adar increase their joy. One might think that it is an odd sentiment in the face of death. But in truth, there is so much to be happy about when reflecting on the life of Alan Sterencier. What a man. What a mensch. Reaching the venerable age of 90. Reflecting upon his life does indeed bring great joy. The first time I met Alan Sterencier, I remember he was wearing a hat. Of course, he was wearing a hat. Not just any hat, but that hat. Maybe it was that one or that one. Maybe it was that one. The hat he was wearing, whichever one it was, clearly made him the most dapper man in the room. Alan was dapper. He was dashing. He was debonair. But he was also humble. He was gentle. He was soft-spoken. Alan Sterencier had a large life. He had a wide range of friends and family and business associates and customers and community. His children and his grandchildren were his everything. But at the center of the universe, there was only one. There was Margie, attached at the hip. They were. They lived together, they loved together, they grieved together. For goodness sakes, indeed, they worked together. They practically breathed together. 63 years, loving, a blessed marriage. Not 63 years of ease, but 63 years of life and of everything that life brought their way. You know, I always thought that the biblical story of Adam and Eve, you know the one about Eve coming into being fashioned out of Adam's rib, was not only unreal and simplistic, but misogynistic too. And yet, I have to tell you, when I think about Margie and Alan, I think about the power of the story of Adam and Eve, which teaches that those two human beings literally shared a rib. Alan and Margie were one. And now, Margie, you are one with your loss, but not really. Because look at the love